Today, I'm going to be showing off a PC build that was inspired by a single deal I got about a week ago, and that's the case you're looking at right now. This is the Cooler Master Elite 110, which I picked up for only $20 new from someone on Craigslist. This is a pretty compact ITX case, but it can fit a surprising amount of hardware. My goal with this build was to build a budget beast using new and used parts with everything fitting inside this tiny case. I tried to use full-size components everywhere I could to really test the boundaries of what this case can hold. Now, before I make it any further into the video, I want to again point out this build is using used parts, and I also wanted to point out that I didn't include the cost of an operating system because Windows 10 can be used unregistered indefinitely, with the only downside being a little watermark in the bottom right of the screen. So now let's go over the parts. Starting off with the CPU, I used an AMD 860K, which I got a while ago in a combo with a motherboard for $80 total. The 860K is a quad-core AMD CPU that fits into the FM2 Plus motherboards and can be overclocked. It doesn't have hyperthreading or anything, but it performs decently well for those of you on a budget. Though this is a decent CPU, if you're currently building a budget PC, then I'd probably recommend looking into the Pentium G4560, as its recent release has really shaken up the low-end CPU market. Like I mentioned before, the CPU I got in a combo with the motherboard, the Asrock A88x-ITX Plus, which is a pretty full-featured ITX board, including everything we need. It also has the ability to overclock, but because of the less than ideal cooling and airflow, I decided to just leave the 860K at stock speeds. Cooling the CPU is a Noctua NH-L12 cooler, which I've had for a while and honestly don't remember how much I paid for it. It's a low-profile cooler that features two fans, but I could only use the smaller one because of clearance issues, which worked perfectly fine. If you're in the market for a low-profile cooler on a budget, I would recommend the CryoRig C7, as it comes in under $30, is very compact, and from what I've read online, performs reasonably well for a low-profile cooler. In terms of RAM, I used a single 8GB stick of DDR3 EVGA RAM. 8GB is really starting to become the minimum for PC gaming at this point, so having a single 8GB stick means there's still room to upgrade in the future to 16GB without any problems. For storage, I actually have a pretty interesting solution. A few weeks back, I picked up two 60GB SSDs for $10 a piece. I used one of those, which is a Corsair SATA 3 SSD, as the boot drive, and I also put in a 500GB Western Digital Blue I picked up for $15 or $20 a while back to hold any large files, as a game like GTA 5 almost eats up an entire 60GB of space on its own. For the power supply, I decided to do something pretty crazy and used a full-size ATX non-modular power supply, which in this case is the EVGA 600W PSU I picked up from Best Buy in person for around $30. Now, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to try and use as many full-size components in this build as possible to see exactly what this tiny case could handle. For the GPU, I also pushed the limits in the fact the card I chose was exactly as long as the max supported card length Cooler Master cites in the manual at 8.3 inches. The card I went with was an AMD HD 7870, which is a pretty good card for light 1080p gaming at 60 FPS. Assembling the PC was definitely a challenge compared to my past experience working with mid and full-size desktops. It took a lot of forethought and planning, but in the end it all came together fine and booted up first try. Even with all the unused cables from the non-modular power supply, there was still room for everything, and the top/side panel went on without a problem. Once I started it up and got into games, it was definitely a fair bit noisier than what I'm used to, but when wearing headphones and in a game, it wasn't really noticeable. Speaking of games, I decided to test 3 games and also do something a little bit different. I wanted to see what setting these games need to be at to produce an average of 60 FPS. The first game I tested was Overwatch, which represents the most resource-intensive esports title out right now. At a mixture of medium and high settings, this PC was able to average 60 FPS with very infrequent drops into the mid-50s. Overall, at these settings, Overwatch looks and performs great. Moving on to the second title I chose to test, GTA 5, which is a very resource-intensive game and also very good at stressing all parts of the system. So to achieve a 60 FPS average, I had to put the settings slightly below what I would consider medium settings, which still looked good while also providing a smooth 60 FPS average with a low of 48. The final game I decided to test was Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, and at the medium preset, I achieved an average of 59 FPS, which I considered to be close enough. This PC is great for 1080p gaming in a compact form factor. I definitely think noise would have been reduced if there weren't all those unused power supply cables, which would have been the case with a modular power supply, but still everything worked fine and none of the components thermal throttled. Overall, I'm really impressed by this little machine, and though I don't think this is the best performance for the money I could have got, I'm still happy with the results. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, as well as consider subscribing for more PC and tech related content in the future. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.